ExileCon 2023 is here, and with it, lots of news about Path of Exile 2. And it's not at all what I expected. Path of Exile 2 has been in development for around 4 years since its first announcement at ExileCon 2019. In that announcement we heard the tagline, "One game, 2 campaigns." This is no longer true. Path of Exile 2 is going to be its own title. It appears to be set many years after the first game, and as usual there's some big bad wanting to end the world. For those of you worried about what might happen to your favourite game Path of Exile 1 after the sequel is released, you probably don't have to worry too much because GGG, at least initially, will be releasing leagues for both Path of Exile 1 and Path of Exile 2. These will be staggered so you can play some of Path of Exile 2, and when you get bored of it you can then jump over to Path of Exile 1. That means my life is even more ruined than it was before. I just don't get enough holidays to cover both releases. Many people suspected that Path of Exile was going to be announced as releasing later this year into closed beta. I thought this was a little ambitious, at least I got something right. It's currently scheduled to release just under a year from now. The sheer scope of the new game is way beyond anything I could have imagined. It features over 100 distinct environments, 600 monsters, 100 bosses, 1,500 passive skill points on the tree and 36 ascendancy classes. There are 240 active skills, 700 equipment types and 6-person co-op. To boot, it looks absolutely breathtaking. Now the game does look to be a lot slower with a lot fewer monsters than in Path of Exile 1. It looks to be returning to the roots of what the developers originally had envisaged for the original game. The game also looks brutally hard, with even the developers who practiced 10 times dying in the demo. If you die while fighting a boss, no longer do you respawn outside the room, you've got to start the whole area again. Each battle, even the mobs, are a lot more challenging. You're going to have to really think and use your skills to beat them. The game has solved a lot of the problems from Path of Exile 1. One of them was they had to make bosses immune to freeze just so you couldn't perma-freeze them and kill them. Instead, things like freeze and stun have a hidden meter that builds up as you hit the enemy. Once it reaches a certain level, you will freeze bosses. And from the gameplay we saw, the freezes did seem to be pretty meaningful, stopping the boss for a couple of seconds. And stun seemed to interrupt them pretty regularly. One thing that didn't look very PoE was the fact that we now drop gold. This wasn't explained very well at the time either, in fact they just skated over it. Later we found out that gold will be used for vendors. It helps solve the challenge of the drops, where we drop hundreds of rares in Path of Exile 1. We'll drop gold instead, with only the most notable rares dropping instead. All the existing currency will there with a lot of new ones. It also appears that gear no longer has any links at all. It's just gear. Instead, each character class, of which there are 12, 2 per stat combination, will have 9 skill gem slots. The skill gems themselves will have up to 5 links to allow you to support them directly. That means potentially you can have 9 6 links, which sounds truly insane. In the gameplay demos we saw, the characters only had like 1 support in each gem. With up to 5, you can imagine the gameplay will be much faster and much easier. They've also made it much harder for you to brick your character in the early game. Chromatic orbs will now only change the colour of a single socket, and it will be deterministic. No more running a chromatic just to find that now you can't use any of your supports. One thing that originally concerned me in the demo is that you saw that skill gems were tied to a character class. Active skill gems now appear to drop uncut. Right-clicking on them will allow you to select the gem you actually want. Later in the character skills talk, my mind was put a little at ease as they did say that any character would be able to play any skill gem, so all the diversity we have in the original game will be in the new one. What is unclear at this point is whether we'll have to play each character to get those gems or not. If we do, it's not a major hardship for me because I tend to play each character each league anyway. Furthermore, when these uncut skill gems drop, they'll drop with the level of the area you're in. So as long as you're maintaining your character to the level of the area, they should be a lot easier to switch over as they drop. Another thing that I wasn't expecting is that they're going to start pushing weapon swap as a viable option. Now a proportion of your skill points on your tree will be able to be changed depending on which weapon swap you're in. Different skills can be tied to different weapon swaps, so when you use them you will swap your weapon automatically. And this of course will pick the alternative skill points on the tree. This gives so much diversity. It isn't however completely free, as you swap your weapon and animation plays, which will slow down the casting of the next skill. Another problem of the original game is the animation system itself. Once a character attack animation has started, it wasn't possible to change targets. It also wasn't possible to get out of some animations, which meant you get one slammed by a boss. They did kind of change movement skills to interrupt the animation system, but this had its own problems in that you would lose mana because the spell would have been cast but never actually hit the target because you interrupted it. In Path of Exile 2, every character class will have its own dodge roll. This will interrupt an animation immediately. To get around losing all that mana, mana will now be spent from when the skill starts over time up until it hits. This means the earlier you dodge and interrupt your animation, the less mana you'll actually spend. For the weapons themselves, these used to have a built-in attack that no one ever used. Instead, weapons are now going to grant a free skill. These skills won't be supportable, so they'll be pretty weak, but they will be mana cost free, which means when you run out of mana, you still have something you can attack with. This is mostly what I learnt from the first day of live streams of ExileCon. There's a whole nother day to go and a whole load of new stuff to learn. As I find out more, I'll pass it on. And if you don't want to miss out on that, click subscribe and turn on notifications so you know when I next publish. I am so truly hyped for Path of Exile 2, I hope you are too. And with that, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.